What's up, guys? Today on the Football Guys Dynasty Football Show, we're diving into the 2024 NFL Scouting Combine, and we are joined by the great Cecil. Cecil, how are you tonight?
I'm doing good. Just landed in Indianapolis. Took a while to get here, but I'm here for yet another scouting combine. Usually the airport has like some scouting combine banners and stuff. I'm by the Indiana Pacers courtside club here in whatever terminal this is. But yeah, so it's a little different here in Indy, but it's always good to be back for a very important part of the process.
Very nice. So, with your experience, I know you've been to quite a few combines. What year was your first combine? Not to age you
My
on the
first
show.
combine was 2010. It's okay. I've been going to the Senior Bowl and the Shrine Bowl for 18 years in a row now. So that was 2007. And then in the combine, it was me and Tim Tebow. We share a birthday, although he's much younger than I am. But it was his combine, and it was flipping crazy. There's been some craziness at these combines with these big name guys. I remember Andrew Luck's combine, Trevor Lawrence's combine. So you've got some big name guys that come through that just make everybody crazy here in Indy. And we certainly have one this year in Caleb Williams. I know we'll get to him in a little bit.
Yeah, I was going to ask, have you felt any of that on your way too? I know you just kind of touched down, haven't really gotten fully settled in yet, but have you felt any of that even on the plane or anything heading in about Caleb Williams?
Yeah, and the thing with Caleb Williams, about a month ago, I had an evaluator tell me he's like Zach Wilson. Okay, that's not great, as we all know. Now, I don't necessarily believe that, but it's these type of things that you begin hearing if there's any sort of doubt. Now, it might be doubt because you can't move up to one and get him. It was about a month ago. I also heard the Bears are going to keep Fields and draft Caleb Williams. Well, I don't think they're going to keep Fields. In fact, there was a owner I was talking to that I had shared that information with him, and he goes, well, what else are they going to say? So, of course, they're going to say that. So, there's a lot of gamesmanship. I do believe, and years ago, the information you got here at the Combine was really quality. You could get some quality information. And then the season of lies would start at pro days. I think the season of lies might have started a little bit early this year. I picked that up at the Shrine game and at the Senior Bowl, hearing those things about Caleb Williams. I don't necessarily believe those type of things. We know that he's a generational talent, and, we'll see how he performs in Indy and talks to the media and all that kind of stuff. And it's great being here because as someone who's gone to the Shrine Bowl and the Senior Bowl, I don't get to talk to guys like Caleb Williams because he wasn't there. Drake Maye was there at the Senior Bowl, but he was just there to shake hands, and he wasn't actually participating in the Senior Bowl. So all the quarterbacks that I have yet to talk to, I've talked to Bo Nix, I've talked to Michael Penix, I've talked to all the guys. Now it's time to talk to Drake Maye, JJ McCarthy, and of course Caleb Williams himself.
Very good stuff. Jeff, anything to add on any of that front thus far?
No, I think it's interesting. I want to give a shout out real quick to Peter King, somebody that I've looked up to for a long time, an Ohio Bobcat graduate. He kind of started maybe the conversation a little bit in his farewell piece today, talking about potential trade options. Do you think that you're going to hear conversation about that in Indy at all, or do you think it's pretty much going to be locked down for the Bears?
Justin Fields might get traded this week. Russell Wilson might get released this week. Russell Wilson is not going to get traded. No one's going to trade for that contract. But the Fields situation is going to come to a head. At least the decision will be made. We may not hear it until afterwards. It was just a couple of years ago at Low Miller's, a tiny bar over by the Sheraton downtown where I'm staying, where George Payton and John Schneider agreed to the Russell Wilson deal on a napkin. Okay, we didn't hear about it until after that, but that's where these things happen. And that's what's great. Anytime, I always run into people like, I want to do what you do. Get your ass to the Senior Bowl. You can't get to the Combine. The Combine it's more difficult to get to the Combine than it is to the Super Bowl, even though there's like 1,500 media members here. So the credentialing process is weird, but you can go to the Senior Bowl. And at the Senior Bowl, you start picking up on these rumblings because when teams get together, and when scouts get together, they start talking. And I am here for information. It's why I was able to know Christian McCaffrey was going to be a Panther. I reported that in February. And Panthers fans called me crazy, whatever. It's like, okay, I'm here for information. So all that stuff is going to go down this week. We may not hear about it until afterwards. But I guarantee you, if Justin Fields is traded, and I do believe he will be traded, it will happen because of something conversation-wise that happened this week, whether that's at Prime 47, which is the big drinking place, and nice steakhouse, St. Elmo's. Not much business happens at St. Elmo's. Everyone goes to St. Elmo's for the shrimp cocktail or whatever. But no, the Indy's where it happens. So all that stuff is going to happen now. I believe there already have been conversations. In fact, I know there have been conversations. And the Bears have kind of, what's the Shaquille O'Neal meme when he's like slapping away negativity and bad feelings and all that? Like, that's what the Bears have been doing with Caleb. But you better come correct. And by come correct, I mean like 3-4 first rounders and somebody significant. Mm-hmm. So, for example, the Denver Broncos, and wanting to move up, they don't want to get rid of Pat Surtain. Guess what they're not going to do? Move up very far, because Surtain is a guy that a couple first rounders in Surtain, that'll get you over the top. If you're unwilling to deal a guy like Pat Surtain, you're not going to move anywhere. You're going to go from 12 to 7 so you can draft JJ McCarthy, because McCarthy is the type of player that could easily rocket his stock here at Indy.
Yeah, 100%. I'm very excited to see JJ, especially with a couple of the quarterbacks not throwing. We're going to get further into the quarterbacks, but first, we do want to mention the 2024 rookie draft guide that we have here at Football Guys. You can find that at footballguys.com/rookie guide. Kevin, Jeff, and I put together 150 prospects for you. The big push right now, version 2 is coming out next week. We're going to have all this combine info for you in our next update. So make sure you download that today. It's free. It's a pretty good resource for rookies. We'll be talking about all these guys a ton. And then we do have to mention Football Guys Fridays on Reddit. This is a new thing, an AMA series that tackles the combine, free agency, and the NFL draft. Kevin, Jeff, and I are taking over the subreddit, the fantasy football subreddit, this Friday. But Football Guys members are going to be doing that every Friday until April 5th. So Dave and Alfredo from the fantasy show, Jagger Maye is going to be on there, Sigmund is going to be on there, and Matt Waldman will also take over that channel. So make sure you are tuned into that. You can ask us anything. That's the point of an AMA. So check us out over on r/fantasy football. I'm a Reddit novice myself. Jeff, talk about Football Guys premium plans real quick.
Yeah, absolutely. Be sure to head to footballguys.com/plans to get a premium subscription. Elite subscribers get custom dynasty, IDP, salary cap, and best ball content for less than $70 annually. Head to footballguys.com/plans to join today. And to get so we're going to have, Christian mentioned the rookie guide. We'll have version 2 following the combine. That includes all the combine testing that's going to take place this week. Version 3, you're going to need to be an elite subscriber to get that version 3. And that's when we really go through team fits. We talk about depth charts, really fantasy focused on that. And so make sure to check that out. Join now, because you can get some great dynasty content leading up to that, but you're going to need to be that subscriber then to get that third version.
Yes, that is very accurate. All right, let's get into the quarterbacks, because the quarterbacks obviously drive a lot of the conversation. The combine, ironically, it's the one where we get the least information on these guys, because they normally don't test. A lot of these guys aren't running. A lot of these guys aren't throwing. One shocker that we got reporting today was that Jayden Daniels is choosing not to run or throw. Cecil, does that come as a surprise to you? Did you think that he was a guy that needed to do any of those things? Or is he kind of solidified at the top?
Well, and here's the thing. I'll make a full disclosure. Jayden Daniels is my favorite quarterback in this class. I understand that Caleb Williams, and I was not swayed, and this is one of my longtime scouting buddies that said the Zach Wilson thing, and he didn't say it jokingly either about Caleb Williams. So there is concern there. We'll talk about it. But Jayden Daniels, to me, and I fully recognize Caleb Williams could be a generational talent. And I'm talking generational like John Elway, Peyton Manning, Andrew Luck. You can count it on one good hand of a bad woodshop teacher. Okay, that's what I say when I mean generational. I'm not talking about like, he's a guy. Like, no. We're talking Caleb Williams could be generational. Jayden Daniels has already cemented himself as the second quarterback off the board. Now, Drake Maye is falling. I picked this up at the Senior Bowl, and by falling, I mean he's falling to 7. Okay, so it's like Drake Maye's falling. Well, that's because everyone just kind of assumed that Maye would be 1 and 2. It'd be Caleb Williams, and then it'd be Drake Maye. That's not the case. I'm very close to the Commanders' new GM, Adam Peters. course, he was from Denver. We have to look at the situation. I'm not going to say that pick would be Jayden Daniels. I haven't talked to Adam since I've been here. Of course, I just got here, but I hope to this week and kind of reconnect with a guy that I saw come up as a scout with the Broncos. In fact, the Broncos haven't been the same since he was allowed to go to San Francisco and further pursue his career. I know how much John Lynch thinks of him. So, they'll be looking for the right guy. That right guy could be Jayden Daniels. He is, clearly that number 2 guy. So by not throwing, not running, okay, he doesn't really need to, because right now the buzz is Daniels will be the second quarterback. And we're likely to see quarterbacks go 3 in the top 5, 4 in the top 10, maybe 5 in the top 12, depending on what happens to Bo Nix this week.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I think that Daniels, I did a mock today, and I had Daniels going to Washington because and it's a he said, but when you hear Ben Johnson talk about the Commanders being run like an NBA team, in my mind, traditionally, NBA team, that mindset is swinging for the fences. Let's go for the guy that has the highest upside. And I think that easily Daniels has a higher upside than Maye. And so that's where a lot of puts me on the position of the Commanders being Daniels. It's interesting because we saw Anthony Richardson command so much of the combine last year with his performance.
Right.
And I do think that Daniels athletically would be the type of player that would be able to do that. So for not performing there, yeah, he has to feel very good about what he's heard.
Yeah, and with Jayden Daniels, you can kind of rest on that, and then we'll see what happens with pro days and stuff. I'm not going to say the combine has jumped the shark. I think it is, the importance of it has been overblown at times. I say it's less than 5% of a guy's grade. So if he throws, he doesn't throw, and these are for the top guys, right? If you're Michael Pratt, you need to do everything you can, okay? If you're Milton, you need to do everything you can. Old Bazooka Joe. Don't call him Bazooka Joe. He actually doesn't like being called Bazooka Joe. Because I talked to Lloyd McCastles, the tight end from Tennessee at the Shrine, and he was talking about Bazooka Joe. So I asked Joe at the Senior Bowl, I was like, "What's up, Bazooka?" He's like, "Don't call me that." Okay. Hey, McCastles said you were Bazooka Joe. But anyway, so guys like that, they need to perform. A guy like Jayden Daniels, no, especially if the rumblings are true, he will be the second quarterback off the board.
Yeah, I think that's legitimate for sure. I did want to ask a very Spencer Rattler specific question. With you being at the Senior Bowl, I think he's got an opportunity to continue rising his stock. I feel like he's been one of those guys that has surprised throughout the process, even though we kind of knew that he was a guy that had those intangibles from a throwing perspective. Maturity questions still there or not? From the Senior Bowl, do you think this is an opportunity for him?
I think, and I love what he told me, because I asked him specifically, why do you love the game? Why do you love it? You could have given up. You could have walked away. You could have been the guy that was on Netflix or whatever, top prospect, didn't do anything. I've seen it a million times. I used to cover guys back to high school. I'll tell a quick story. Locally in Denver, there was a gentleman named John Riegel who was on the Fan before me. He had a show with Adam Schefter, by the way, back in years and years ago. I never met John Riegel. He passed away before I joined the Fan in 2007. But I always, when I was riding tractor, okay, out in the country, listening to sports radio, I'd listen to John Riegel. So when I was hired by the Fan, the program director, Tim Spence, said, "This is the new John Riegel." And I said, "Oh, whoa, I'm not John Riegel." John would know guys back to high school, like top of his head, anybody back to high school, stats, everything. He was just a savant. Didn't have a computer in front of him. This is, before computers, really. It was like the mid-90s, late 90s. So, to have that sort of level, I used to try to do that, and then I realized 75% of the guys wash out. So, it's a time thing. I'm not going to pay attention to high school. But you pay attention to Spencer Rattler. You pay attention to a quarterback on Netflix, right? You're going to watch the kid. But I loved his answer because he talked about what football meant to him and how important it was in his life and growing and learning and maturing. Now, I'm a sucker for a good answer. I'm in the media, for God's sake. But okay, I bought it. I bought it hook, line, and sinker. Now, he still bird dogs way too much. There was so much misinformation from the Senior Bowl. And not that every one of my evaluations is correct, but I've seen special at the Senior Bowl. His name was Justin Herbert. Okay. I've seen Aaron Donald at the Senior Bowl. I know what special looks like. Bo Nix was not good at the Senior Bowl, and I blame the practices. And Jim Nagy I might reach out to Jim just to tell him, like, they need to standardize practice at the Senior Bowl because it's now just a bunch of assistants. It's not staffs. So they don't have any idea how to run practice. There were no 7-on-7 drills until Thursday for Bo Nix. That's why he looked like crap. He's a timing and rhythm guy, and he's just out there throwing to guys he's never thrown to. Like, I really felt bad for him. Rattler, a little more used to, new systems and new surroundings and all that type of stuff. Not that Nick shouldn't be, but like Rattler was better. He was the most consistent, but he's still a bird dog. He's still like, what's up, right? Squirrel. Like, hey, there's my receiver. And he doesn't take his eyes off it. So I appreciate, and I do believe that he's had some maturity. I like players that have been through the crucible because these guys are handed everything. Most of their lives, you're the man, you're the man, you're the man. Tell us how great you are. Well, when you're not great and you have to go fight to be just good, that's what Spencer Rattler had to do. So I appreciate the story, but I'm not here for the story, baby. I'm here for the quarterbacks and, covering the Broncos and talking Broncos. Obviously, that's the only talk of the town. It's like everyone's on Twitter telling me, find us a quarterback, Cease. Okay, I'll have some conversations. I'll see what I can dig up. But Spencer Rattler's not part of any sort of long-term plan. Everyone's looking for the next Brock Purdy. I talked to Brock Purdy for an hour at the Shrine game. He said he was done. I thought I was going to buy insurance from him. Okay? Like, that's where Brock Purdy's head was at. He was telling me, I'm enjoying this week because it's my last time playing football. Okay? Like, so everyone, who's the next Brock Purdy? There's no next Brock Purdy. We got to get that out of our head. So Rattler's a nice, late round, day 3 type of guy. He didn't work his way into the first round. Didn't work his way into the second round. Maybe someone takes him to the third round. And again, I like his maturity. I like his skill. But as Scott McLuhan told me years ago, physical stuff's easy to see. So we got to talk about the mental. We do have to talk about the maturity. And with Rattler, it's probably still a question for NFL teams who question everything.
For sure. Jeff, go ahead.
Yeah, you talked about Drake Maye sliding back a little bit, and we touched on JJ McCarthy real briefly. I know McCarthy is gaining a lot of steam right now. Do you think that this could be the week? Do you think that he can move above Drake Maye? And do you think that this could be the week that momentum happens? Or do you think that maybe McCarthy is one of these? I know our good friend Matt Waldman talks quite a bit about the TV show that is the Combine and the quarterbacks being the stars of the TV show. And I think that we had it with Malik Willis 2 years ago. We had it with Will Levis last year. It kind of feels like maybe Michael Penix or Bo Nix were positioned to be that guy there, and then kind of fell flat maybe at the Senior Bowl. And now it kind of seems like JJ McCarthy's being positioned to be kind of that guy, whereas like we've seen them fall off. Do you think it's real, the momentum that McCarthy's gaining on potentially Drake Maye, or do you think that this is kind of manufactured content?
I think it's manufactured content. I do not have a first-round grade on JJ McCarthy. If it was a year from now, I probably would. You got to do more. We got to see more. Like, I've seen him make stick throws. I've seen him throw cover 2 beaters. I've seen him hold the safety with his eyes. He doesn't do it enough. So I can't realistically just fall in love. He's a first round. Like, again, the physical stuff's easy to see. Can he run? Does he have the arm? Can he throw with touch? Yeah. God, that's so easy. It goes way beyond that. And it's not just about number of reps, Bill Parcells. He's got to have 23 starts. Like, oh, God, for the love of God. It's not just some sort of a line. McCarthy this week is mostly going to impress on the whiteboard. That's where he's going to impress because from what I know, I've been told he has a photographic memory. And guys that have photographic memories, one I know, his name's Sean McVay, right? Now, he wasn't pro quarterback, but still, like, McCarthy's going to impress when teams tell him complex things that he understands, and it's staying ahead of the play. You heard Tom Brady and Steve Young talk about this on a podcast. Everybody has a podcast. But it was like, are you ahead of the play or are you behind the play? Like, when the ball snapped, why are you reacting to what's happening? You should have already known what was going to happen. And that's just Brady's mindset. It was Steve Young's mindset. JJ McCarthy's going to have that similar mindset. So he's going to impress his way into the top 10, most likely. I still don't believe that he's ahead of Drake Maye. If that changes here in Indy, trust me, I'll let everybody know. But right now, it's still Maye 3, McCarthy or Nix 4. Michael Penix is a mid-second rounder at best, probably a third rounder. I got off the plane in Texas, okay, for the Shrine Bowl. Started talking to some evaluator friends of mine, guys that work in the league. 2 people told me independently, not a group chat, independently, they told me Penix has work ethic problems, can't get him in a weight room. I sat next to him at the Senior Bowl. The dude is skinny. I lost 60 pounds 2 years ago. I know what skinny is, okay? I'm sitting next to Penix. I'm like, yeah, that's not an NFL built. He's a left-handed Teddy Bridgewater. And if there's work ethic concerns, that's bothersome. Now, I generally stay away from that type of stuff. When Darren Orlovsky ran with the Justin Fields, uses epilepsy to get out of practice stuff, which was garbage. I debunked it immediately because you know what I did? I called coaches. I called players. Well, with Penix, nobody's debunking what I've heard. So again, I always be very careful because we don't know. Maybe a guy's work ethic totally changes when he's a pro. But maybe it doesn't. But it's just odd that he's not even at the Shrine Bowl and I get off the plane and I'm hearing about work ethic problems. Again, it's either season of lies began early or this is something that's got some legs there. And then I look at his legs, specifically his lower body, which always scared me about Deshaun Watson. It always scared me about Teddy Bridgewater. Teddy had a first-round grade on. He's smart and accurate. You can do a lot with a quarterback that's smart and accurate. And Penix is smart. And Penix is accurate. And he has some elite traits physically. But again, it's not about the physical stuff. And if you're not going to put it in a weight room and you got 2 bum shoulders, 2 bum knees, Indy for him, for McCarthy, it's the whiteboard. For Nix, it's throwing. I was on a plane all day, so I hope he's still throwing. If that's different, please let me know. Nix needs to throw well because he did not, and I understand. I was at the Senior Bowl when, I won't name names, but top TV names were saying Logan Thomas is going to be a great quarterback. He's throwing passes in the flipping dirt, okay? I'm not saying Nix was doing that. Nix got better as the week went on. But Nix was so disappointing to me, and maybe that's my fault. I was super excited about him, still excited about him. But evaluators I trust say the Senior Bowl doesn't change his grade. Wasn't a great look, doesn't change his grade. And I do understand because I've already heard people saying, well, whatever TV personality is saying he's awesome. Like, they have to say that. They have to say that because you're gonna get all hyped up. You're like, there are no quarterbacks at the Senior Bowl. Next. What's LeBron doing? Right? If that's your job, and again, I've been in this game 20 years, man. I know the job, right? And then your job is to hype everybody. Bo Nix, oh my God, Bo Nix. Bo Nix wasn't good, okay? I think he can be better, much better at the Combine. He's still a first rounder, and I'm still excited about him, especially as a potential fit with Sean Payton.
Yeah, good stuff. We have to let you go here in a second. Well, last question. If you had to predict who the Broncos starting quarterback is next year, who are you going with?
Drake Maye.
Drake Maye.
Okay. They move up for Drake Maye. I feel pretty good about that. Can't say that's a Lassie bark, but I feel pretty good about that. If that information changes, I'll let everybody know. Sean Payton, and this is the problem. I don't know where he's at. He doesn't like me, so I have to be very careful. George Payton, please be careful with who you talk to in the media because there's local people that say they talk to the Broncos. Broncos don't talk to anybody, okay? I'm going to be very clear about that. They don't talk to anybody. So if you're promoting yourself as someone who talks to the Broncos, you're lying. And there's a lot of liars out there. I'm an insider on Twitter. But George Payton, this radio guy in Minnesota says, Sean Payton really loves JJ McCarthy. Shh, dude, what are you doing? Like, if that information did come from George Payton, like, that'll get you fired. And he's already on a hot seat for the Russell Wilson deal, Randy Gregory deal, like all that bad stuff. Passing on Tariq Woolen so he could take De'Aaron Turner-Yell. Passing on Isaiah Pacheco so he could take Montrell Washington. There was zero buzz about the Samford. Hey, guys, the guy from Samford didn't work out in the NFL. I'm shocked. Anyway, so it's like, George, what are you doing, man? If they do love McCarthy, we'll find out. But right now, my feel is they will move up for Drake Maye. Now, they may not have to move up that far, from 12 to 7. They got to get in front of Atlanta. I also heard it's already been out there, but I had heard at the Senior Bowl, like the Giants want to move up. Like, there's a lot of teams that want to move up. And they look at next year, you got Shedeur, and, we'll see. But it's not as rich as it is this year. There'll be 5 quarterbacks taken in the first round, likely in the top 12.
Cool. All right, Cecil, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate your time. Go get some info. Go collect some info at the combine.
That's what I'm here for, man. I'll go to the combine, and I'm here all week. And of course, check out footballguys.com. I'll be reporting on our newswire, and of course, talking about it on the Audible. Appreciate you guys.
We are going to continue this one. Thank you so much to Cecil. That was awesome. That was a really great conversation. As two people that floated out the idea of going to the combine at some point. We live close enough. I think that's some career goals for us as we continue our work here at Football Guys. We are going to continue on with wide receivers. We're going to go through all position groups before the end of this show. Wide receivers, let's get right into it. That was a really great conversation on quarterbacks. The wide receivers are not as exciting because Marvin Harrison Jr. and Malik Nabers are not doing any drills. They're not doing any testing. They are simply there to have a nice interview with teams. That said, Rome Odunze is doing drills, and I think that's an opportunity. He's number 3 on Daniel Jeremiah's big board right now. Jeff, do you think there's a chance that Odunze is taken before one of Nabers or Marvin Harrison Jr. at this point?
No, I can't imagine that. I think that just like we talked about with quarterbacks with Jayden Daniels and with Caleb Williams, Marvin Harrison Jr. and Malik Nabers, I think, have gotten intel that they're probably very safe. I love Daniel Jeremiah. He's one of my favorites, and he's been probably higher on Rome Odunze than anybody else throughout the entire process. And so, I don't blame him at all for going there. And I know that he had him at 5 to the Chargers in an early mock, and that was even before Jim Harbaugh was the coach of the Chargers. But we know that Daniel Jeremiah is very plugged in to that Chargers organization. So, if he knows something, he knows something. But I think that I don't know. I don't think that is in play. I mean, you know me and my scouting and what I've put together for the rookie guide. My question is, how much of the gap that Troy Franklin can close this week? Because we've been talking about that probably for 2 months on how big this week could be for Franklin, because I've been a big believer that when you've got a 6'3" wide receiver that can run sub 4.4 and he can run at multiple levels and has shown the ability after the catch, that is a guy that I think could close the gap quite a bit and become a top half of the first round pick. And so I would probably turn that back on you and say maybe not Marvin Harrison Jr. and Malik Nabers getting threatened by Rome Odunze, but is Rome Odunze going to get threatened by Troy Franklin?
I think that's a proper question to ask. I think those 4 wide receivers are the ones that are going in the top 20 in the draft this year. And so when we start to put both of those 2 conversations into context, Cecil believes 5 quarterbacks in the top 12. I believe 4 wide receivers in the top 20. That leaves 11 picks for the other positions. So I think what we're going to see is a lot of movement at the top of this draft. We haven't a ton. Last year, we started to see it again. There was the weird COVID years where everyone was just kind of staying put. There was no trading happening at the actual at draft night. But yeah, I mean, if I had to bet money right now on what Troy Franklin runs and what he jumps, I think he's going to be a 9 or higher relative athletic score. And when we talk about wide receivers that have that ability to generate explosives, everything you hear from every NFL team is we need to generate explosives. Why? Because of things that you and I and Kevin have talked about on this show, where teams can't get explosives just by throwing vertical routes anymore. They have to generate them in different ways. Troy Franklin's one of those players. All 4 of those guys are those players for teams. With that being said, I think Troy Franklin, 4.3s. I think he could run like a 4.38 at 6'3". And hopefully he measures at 6'3". He might be like 6'2", but I think that's okay. 6'2", 4.38 is what I would be hoping for. I think if he runs like a 4.44, I'm good with that too. So I'm excited to see what he does this week. I know you've got a couple. I mean, Xavier Legette and Devontez Walker are the 2 that I think had round 1 buzz at some point in this offseason that could kind of boost their stock again. Everything's very roller coaster cyclical when it comes to stock in this cycle. Legette, I think, is going to be a good tester. He's a very fast player. Tez Walker is the same way. Out of those 2, who do you think boosts their stock the most this week?
I think Leggett boosts his stock the most. I think that if he tests close to the ballpark of Walker, then I think the Leggett kind of solidifies. He's got a stronger body frame. He is a more natural. I think you can do a little bit more with him on the field in terms of creating after the catch and still having that verticality. I mean, Walker catching the ball was a problem at the Senior Bowl, and so while he can go out there with the quarterbacks that might be throwing to him or with the jugs machine and catch the ball in those situations, is it going to be able to erase what he had already put out there? It would be my question on that, in terms of, did he already put too much negative out there? And it's tough, because while this is a great atmosphere for a player like that, and he's able to perform like that, it's a lot of the things, like as Cecil was talking about Michael Penix, so it was kind of going in my mind on how can he erase the things that he did at the Senior Bowl, with struggling with pressure, with struggling with those types of things. Like you can't simulate that at the combine the way that you can. We know that his RPMs will be great on the ball. Whereas like Walker, we know he's going to run fast, but how do you erase the drops that he had in the game and some of the other things that he put on tape at the Senior Bowl? Because the situation is going to be asking for different things.
Yeah, and I do hope that Tez Walker does go through the drills, because I think there's some good opportunities for him to kind of mitigate that. With they have the jump ball like high pointing drill that they do, that got Quentin Johnston into the first round probably because he did so well at that drill when that was a question. I think Tez Walker has different types of hands issues though, where I think some of those short, like they run whip routes for the quarterbacks. If Tez Walker's out there doing that and he drops a few, I think it could be pretty dire to his draft stock. I do want to mention Malik Washington. He's your favorite, one of your favorites. And not to claim first, but man, you were really early on Malik Washington
I
before all
mean,
the
only
buzz.
because you tipped me. So I mean,
No,
you deserve it.
no. You got more eyes on him, but there's a report that he has an official 40 time in the 4.4s. I think that shows up on film.
Yeah.
How disappointing would it be if he's a 4.5 guy and he doesn't really test well from an explosiveness perspective?
Quite a bit. I think that when you look at, obviously production was through the roof in Virginia, and I'm living in the heart of Big Ten country. I certainly understand what he was dealing with it with that Northwestern offense, and I am able to give him a complete pass on him having lower numbers there. He was still the leading receiver, but what he put out on tape, what he put out production wise with Virginia, because those explosives show up on tape, and that's the biggest thing that you see. This is a player that he's able to create. He's creative after the catch. He's able to win downfield vertically. He's able to check all those boxes as you go through and look for what a player can do. He checks so many boxes from what he put on film last year for what was a very bad Virginia team. And so that's where, if the testing doesn't measure that to that level, it's interesting, because one of the guys that I've talked to you about on what am I not seeing based upon the conversation that I'm seeing is Jamari Thrash. And you kind of look at the production that Malik Washington had, and you look at Thrash and what I'm feel like I'm not seeing there, and even maybe a little bit to the conversation around Keon Coleman, a little bit of what is that ACC conference is kind of where that question turns into. I think if these guys come out here and they don't test like the way that you want to see that, is this just kind of, is that conference so bad that it's almost not that different than the AAC conference relative to what some of these players in the Big Ten and the SEC are doing? If we don't see those testing, those types of questions would enter my mind. I certainly hope that, being big on Malik Washington, I hope he performs, and I hope that he has a great week. There's a handful of guys that I'm really, really excited to see what they do this week. Jalen Coker from Holy Cross, and our good friend JC is from the area, and he's gassing him up when I saw that on film. And so, and then another guy that you were on early, Marcus Rosemy-Jacksain, is a player that I think we're both higher than consensus on. He is primed to have a great week. My deep name, I told you pre-show, Bub Means, is very, very raw, but he's a player that can have some great testing numbers here. And so some of these players that are, as you move down the list, that's where my excitement lies relative to seeing maybe some of these top guys that aren't going to be out there.
Yeah, one top guy that I think should be out there. I don't know if he'll end up testing, but Xavier Worthy is a player that we didn't put on this list, but a player that needs to run fast, I think. I think his stock is just all over the place. When you look at, I've seen him in first round mocks. I've seen him not in the top 75 in some mocks from industry guys. So I think he's got a big week ahead of him. He's also got hands questions that I think he can use some of those drills to dispel a little bit. Um, but man, this wide receiver class, we can't stress enough. This wide receiver class is very, very strong. You mentioned JC. He's going at it about Ladd McConkey and how it's crazy how people are talking about a guy who's not top 5 on many people's lists. Is a quote that he gave me. I think Ladd McConkey is probably a top 5 receiver in most classes, though, and that's just the nature of how strong this class is. Brian Thomas Jr. is a name we haven't even mentioned that's probably also going in the first round. So this class is crazy. The class that's not as crazy as the running backs, we're going to talk about those over on the podcast version, and the full version of every show can be found on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you're enjoying the show, make sure you head to your favorite podcast app, search up the Football Guys Dynasty Football Show, and make sure you subscribe. Leave us a review as well. We've been getting a few reviews in there, so would love to see some more. Catch us over there. We're going to talk running backs and tight ends.